Do I have your attention? 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 Do I have your attention?
Is you taking notes?
Hey, what's up, you guys? It's your boy SimplyFoodByTy, and today, honey, I am going to teach you how to make some salmon croquettes, or some people like to call it fried salmon cakes, whatever you like to call it, honey. So what we're doing right now is we are prepping the vegetables. And as always, like I always say, if there is something that I'm adding in this that you are either allergic to or you just simply don't like the damn taste of it, honey, you know what I say? Don't put it in it. You know what I mean? This is my recipe, and this is just the things that I like to add in it. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in just half of a red bell pepper. You don't want to use the whole thing. I just think that's too much. And honestly, half goes a long way because we're going to use a green bell pepper as well. Now, what I will say is you definitely want to make sure that you mince this down. And if you have a food processor, you can skip all of this chopping. Just throw it in the food processor and just do it that way. But just make sure that you're pulsing it. You don't want too much liquid to be removed out of the peppers. So just make sure you're getting it down to a small mince, but don't go pulverizing it if you do use a food processor. And like I said, we're going to use a green bell pepper as well. Now, I will say someone had asked me about the possibility of using a Scotch bonnet pepper as well in this recipe. Now, this is the thing. At the end of the day, it's your food, so whatever you would like to add to it, I say go for it. That's the joy of cooking. It's trial and error. You could find something to be an amazing addition to the recipe, or it could be horrendous. You never know unless you try. But what I will say is if you're going to use a Scotch bonnet pepper, I would highly advise for you, number one, to make sure you use gloves. And number two, I would take the seeds out because salmon is something that really soaks up the seasonings and the peppers and the spices. It really soaks up whatever additions you add to it. And for that reason, I would say remove the seeds because you don't want this to be overly spicy. So just keep that in mind. What I have right here is a half of a sweet onion, which I've cut in half, and I'm only going to use a half of that. I'm not really too keen on a lot of onions, as I always say, so I'm just not going to use that much. Breaking that down to a mince, and then I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side as well. So what we're using right here is a can of wild Alaskan pink salmon. Of course, you don't have to use this brand. You can use whatever, brand you want. I'm going to be using 2 cans in this recipe, but I'm just showing you how to prep one of them. So now this part of this video is really a matter of preference. I know plenty of people that take it from the can, put it right in the bowl, and start mixing all the stuff in it. Now, if you want to do that, that's completely fine. The bones, the skin, all of that stuff that's in the can is edible. And, you won't go choking or anything like that because it's been cooked down for so long that those bones are going to completely disintegrate, especially once you start frying it or baking it or doing whatever you're going to do to it. However, for me, it's just something about it that it just doesn't sit well with me. So, honey, I have to clean that stuff out. It ain't gonna work. So I just take my finger and I wipe it on down. You don't need to go rinsing it off or, you ain't got to do all that now. And I'm not sitting here saying that you're trying to make it look completely pretty, but I like to just remove the excess skin, and I also remove the bones. I'm going to give you guys a close-up shot of that in a few seconds where you'll be able to really see the spine and how it's completely intact, and how, if you wanted to, you could eat it, but it's just not for me. So as you can see here, when I open this up right there at the top, that is literally the spine. You could eat it if you want to. Ain't nobody got time for that. I would say take your time, though, when you're taking it out, because if you do, it'll come out in one piece, and then you can just set it to the side. But as you can see, this is a full plate of stuff that I'm discarding. I'm not using any of that, you know what I mean? So that is all going to go to the trash, and then you're going to be left with a beautiful bowl of just the salmon itself. So I'm going to be adding in a tablespoon of onion powder, a tablespoon of garlic powder. I'm also going to be using 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. That's always optional. I'm going to be using 2 tablespoons of Old Bay. If you're not a big Old Bay person, or if you can't have a lot of salt, I would say use 1, because Old Bay can be very salty. Keep that in mind. A half a tablespoon of black pepper. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of yellow mustard and about 1/3 of a cup of Duke's mayonnaise. you want to be mindful or keep an eye on how much mayonnaise you're going to use because you don't want your mix to be too loose. Now, I always say per can of salmon, I would use 1 egg to really help bind it. I used 2 cans, so that's why I've added in 2 eggs here. So now we're just going to add in the green peppers, the onion, and the red bell peppers. That is it for all of the ingredients. There's not a lot that goes into this. It really doesn't take much time to make these at all. Make sure your hands are nice and clean and just give it a good old mixing, honey. Now, once you get this going, what I would suggest, if and when you make this, and if it seems like your mix is way too loose, what I would suggest is to get yourself either some buttered crackers, something like Toll House, or what's another brand? Something like Ritz, something like that. Just crumble them up nice and fine and throw those in there. If you would like, you could also use breadcrumbs, but I would suggest using plain. Don't use like Italian. You don't want to add any additional flavor to it, just to really help bind it up. But if you kind of stick to my recipe exactly, you should be okay. Another good tip is that once you start making up your patties, another good way to really help, really let all of the seasonings gel together and also help the patties keep their shape, is what I do is I wrap them in saran wrap, and then I place it in the refrigerator for about a half hour, just to let it get nice and cold. And that should also really help you keep the shape of the salmon croquettes. Now, as you can see, I'm making mine into big size patties. You can definitely make them much smaller if you want to make miniature croquettes, and you can get way more. With this particular recipe, I was able to make 8 salmon croquettes total, which was fabulous. And the good thing about these, honey, is you could have these bad boys with fried potatoes. You can have them with baked beans. You can eat them as a sandwich. You can eat them for dinner. You can eat them for breakfast. And, in the African-American culture, or, at least in my experience, we can eat them for dinner and for breakfast, and they are just as delicious. So don't be, worried about if you made too many of them, because they warm up nicely the next day as well. So what I'm going to do is now, like I said, is I'm going to go ahead and wrap these up with saran wrap, and I'm just going to place it in the fridge for about a half hour. Then what we'll do is when we'll come back, we'll go ahead and get our grease prepared. Now, I'm going to be cooking these, you guys, in vegetable oil. Now, you want to make sure that your oil is nice and hot. Now, you don't want to put too much oil like I did. I have no idea why I put as much oil as I did. You definitely don't need that much. You're not trying to deep fry them. I think just because I'm still getting used to using my new pan, that I can't eyeball how much oil I'm putting in. But as you can see, this pan, the oil in this is not bubbling up around the sides. It's just about to be at that boiling temperature. Now, the reason why I do that is because I had too much oil in it, so I let the temperature low down so that I didn't burn my damn finger off. But the temperature comes up in about a split second. So now we're good to go. You guys, these only take maybe roughly about 2 minutes per side. Keep an eye on them. I prefer mine a little bit on the browner side. Some people like the salmon croquettes a little bit more on the tan side. Because I add egg to mine, I don't really play that game, so I like mine a little bit on, I like to just make sure they're cooked. These by no means are burnt, nor are they dried out. I like a little bit of crisp to mine, if that makes any sense. Like I said, get yourself a sandwich, put it on a bun, lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, and have yourself a ball. So I'm just going to repeat this process for all 8 of them. And you guys, that's it. You've made yourself some salmon croquettes. It's really, really simple. Look, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today. If you are new to my channel, welcome to Simply Food by TY. If you're one of my returning subscribers, well, y'all know I love y'all so much. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you try out this recipe. They're absolutely delicious. And as always, y'all baby stay cute and take care. Bye, guys.
Slaying in the kitchen.
Simply Food by TY.
We hope that you enjoyed it.
Simply Food by TY. If you haven't took the time, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Simply Food.